So if I could welcome to the screen John and Kamutha. So the idea of this panel, just to let everyone know what's going on, is that it's really a reflection, kind of a roundup of the stream so far. So I think we've heard four amazing presentations, really interestingly connected to each other, and now Phil has given us this different angle, a different perspective that I think is making us think pretty hard. So what I'd like to do is introduce each of the additional panel members. Thankfully, Phil is staying with us to introduce themselves. So that the interesting thing is like, who are you? Where are you coming from? What is your perspective that you're bringing to this panel? And then once we've said hello to the panel members, then we'll get into a bit of a reflection of what we've heard. So first up, could I ask John to introduce yourself?
Of course. Can you hear me, Mark?
Yeah, we can hear you well.
Perfect. Good morning, everyone. My name is John Holden, and I am the team lead for the Digital Twin Hub that is located at Connected Places Catapult. The Digital Twin Hub is essentially a digital twin community where people come together to share information, share knowledge, and just find ways to progress digital twins, not only in the UK, but globally.
John, thank you very much. And Kamutha, can we welcome you as well? And if you just do a little bit of an intro to yourself and your perspective. And John was super succinct there. You don't have to be quite that succinct. You can
Right.
take a little bit more of a chunk if you like.
Well, don't get me started, Mark. Thank you. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Kamutha Swampillai. I am the Director of Data Science at a company called Intent HQ. We're a small, medium-sized enterprise based in London. And part of what we do is we create digital twins of consumer behavior for large enterprises, across different sectors, including telco and finance and those kinds of things. And I suppose I'm quite new to the digital twins community, I suppose. And thank you, Mark, and also Arthur for introducing me here. But I have been really not surprised, but really pleased to see that there are so many similar problems that we're all tackling from all these different angles. And whilst I bring my commercial or industry perspective today, I think there are two areas which I could see a lot of overlap here, and that is, one of them is around the way we are bringing together our various different data streams, from web browsing, behavioral data streams, from web browsing behavior, financial transactions, all of that kind of data, and the way we leverage our own behavioral graph in order to bring those data streams together into a single view of people's interests and brands as well. So that's one way in which we organize our data, enable us to bring all these very disparate kinds of data together into a single view. And the other one is really around privacy, which I think Simon touched on. So many of the presenters here today did touch on as well, whether that's from aggregations through to differential privacy that Arthur Beryl has also raised as well. We've also touched on many of these issues and used many of these approaches, including, I think someone also mentioned synthetic data generation, which we do a lot of as well, and creating embeddings and vector representations of some of our twins as well. So that's the perspective I bring today.
Which is a really good one. So we want to hear more from that perspective for sure. So John, you've done a great job of introducing yourself and a little bit of the community that you represent. So just for us now to start kind of reflecting on what we've heard, and given that you kind of have contacts into a really significant digital twin community.
Mhm.
What would your reflections be from that perspective on what you've heard this morning?
I mean, I think one primary reflection that I have is how the needs of digital twins is ever growing, and it's something that's continued to expand throughout time. Um, like Phil mentioned earlier, talking about how when he started in this work, it wasn't even known to be digital twins. And it's kind of that shows that as digital twins became a more prominent term in the methodology and tools that kind of underpin them, it's kind of to expand and show that there are so many different challenges that digital twins could potentially benefit, but there's also many risks that comes with the growing into different sectors. But that's where it's become so vital that conferences such as this happen so that people from other sectors can take the learnings, find ways to potentially grow on them, and potentially kind of take that learning to their sector. Because if we only work in our individual silos, whether those silos are sector-based or maybe location-based, what will quickly happen is we will begin to create more problems than opportunities. And that's kind of where I think looking at, like, even today, you had energy system, you had transit, you had climate resilience, going into those different kind of topics and realizing there are so many similarities, but the things that make them different are just as important as the things that make them the same. And finding ways to take those learnings from both and figure out, well, how can they work together? How can they connect? Is ideally our long-term ambition. And I think that the more we have these sharing opportunities to kind of talk about the work we are doing and talk about the failures that maybe we have in our work, the more progression will occur. And hopefully we can get to a day where not only do digital twins exist in a much more prominent fashion, but connected digital twins that are cross-sectoral exist as well.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, it really is about those connections and kind of cross-organizational, cross-industry, cross-sector type of connections. And so, do you want to just mention briefly how you're facilitating that, how you're encouraging that in the context of the DT Hub? How does that kind of play into this space?
Yeah, of course. So when it comes to the DT Hub, when it was created, it was a project started at the Center for Digital Built Britain, which Mark was a part of, Alex Luck was a part of, Ahmet was a part of, Simon was a part of. So a lot of people today all had a key part in founding that. And what it was created to be was that place where people could come together and kind of upskill themselves when it comes to digital twins. So we're very much focused on not having a barrier of entrance when it comes to digital twins, because even myself, 3 years ago, I didn't really have much experience with digital twins because I come from a more international relations background. But by becoming a part of the digital twin community, I was able to upskill myself and figure out, well, how can I progress the digital twin ecosystem? What can I do to use digital twins to solve global challenges such as climate change or decarbonization of transport? And that's very much what the DT Hub is looking to do as well, is provide that ecosystem where individuals could come in regardless of their entry point, upskill themselves so that they're able to be more involved in the progression of digital twins. And hopefully along the way, you'll be able to meet many contacts, learn from other sectors, and collaborate on different projects that will enable you to find success, but also to really make an impact in this global ecosystem that the digital twins has slowly became.
That's really good, isn't it? So you're going to have to put a link to that now in the chat.
Yeah, I'll do that now.
Yeah, jumping across to Phil. So you were one of our esteemed speakers, but what I'm going to cheekily do now is ask for your reflections on what you heard from the other speakers, because I think, as you put it, you have definitely brought a different perspective, and that is super useful. But as a kind of a member of the audience, the other speakers, what was it that struck you from the others? What are your reflections?
So I think on the really good side, there's clearly a strong direction and willingness to collaborate. I think that's really powerful, and to be encouraged. I think there's a lot of knowledge there, and a lot of work being done that people like me, although not necessarily my co-leader David Flynn, but people like me can learn how to leverage to good effect. I think what I would like to see more is the application side of things, I suppose. What is the problem that needs a digital? Why do you need a digital twin? Why can't you do it another way better? I think, and in transport, that's very clear to me because we've got a speed that we have to get to in order to achieve and deliver what we have to do. I guess there's also a piece around how do you embrace some of this stuff that is on the fringe of digital twinning, digital models. Kamutha was talking about consumer models. We've done similar things, which are sort of phone apps that capture people's behavior and capture their behavior, giving them certain incentives. So I think don't put the barriers up around digital twinning. It is a great tool, and at the moment there is that willingness to collaboration, but start looking at, I think you're at a position in the digital twinning community where you can start looking outwards.
Yes.
You don't need to sort of be building the digital twin capability. That's powerful enough.
Yeah.
Start looking outwards, outside the digital twin community, to the problems.
Because there's another little irony in there, isn't there? If we're trying to do the digital twins in order to kind of break silos and make connections, it would be an irony if we just ended up creating a big digital twin silo. That wouldn't be a good thing.
Yes, and I think the work is there from Alex and Simon's presentation. It's clearly there, but can't say I was aware of it before I started looking into it 12 months ago.
And I think in many ways that is part of the job of the Digital Twin Hub, is to kind of bring the communities together and to get the messages out there. Because one of the things which strikes me is what the value is of bringing the different pieces together to tell the whole story. Because actually the whole story is really good, and as so often happens with kind of systems-based things, it is that the whole genuinely is more than the sum of the parts. So I think we have to bring the parts together and see what the whole is. So, Kamutha, you gave us a great indication as to what your perspective is, where you're coming from. Be really interested now to hear what you kind of thought of what you heard.
Yeah, so lots of different things. I suppose coming from an SME background as well, we are quite use case based because we are out in companies trying to solve their everyday problems around customer experience, around in many different aspects. But what I think I really took from all three, all of the presentations really, was sort of the ambition of your digital twins. You are trying to solve net zero, decarbonisation of the entire transport infrastructure. And I don't think I had really thought about digital twins quite on that scale. Yes, that interconnectedness, but not necessarily that, we could be solving some of these these huge big social problems of our time in this way. So I think that's one thing I've taken away, and maybe in my way, just as you said, let's not put barriers around this. I should be maybe thinking a bit larger myself in sort of the wider impacts we could have. I think that's one of the things I certainly took away. Also, I think there are a few sort of pieces, words that just kept on coming up again and again and again. One of them was around graphs and knowledge graphs. One of them was around federated learning. These seem to be like sort of really key methods or techniques which are underlying all of these different approaches, sort of irrelevant of sectors. And again, federated federated, sharing in a federated way, but also, with my background, we are doing a lot of machine learning. A lot of the digital twins work we do is to power predictive models and those kinds of things. And we are now we've started looking into, even federating our learning, moving less data and federating as much as we can to bring together the signal rather than bringing together the data. And I think I heard themes of that going across as well.
Yeah, that's really helpful to kind of spot those common themes and the words which kept coming up. That's exactly what we wanted to do in this panel. So thank you. I mean, something which I wonder we might move on to is any of the gaps that you spotted, and I think Phil, you've already helpfully started to point to that. But in hearing what we have across the morning. Is there anything that you've heard that that there's kind of a bit of a gap appearing, or something that we need to pay attention to, something maybe that hasn't been said rather than something that has been said? So we've had great reflection on what has been said, but what are the bits that still need filling? So it's a slightly difficult question because we're looking at the stuff that we can't see. But John, you're nodding, so I'll come to you first.
Okay. One gap that I have kind of seen more apparent, not only today, but also kind of in my work at the Digital Twin Hub, is how digital twins are often thought about in the creation of new assets. So as you are developing new infrastructure, digital twins become a key aspect of that. But one thing that we must very much take into account is that most of our infrastructure is not new, and most of it is needing to be retrofitted or upgraded. And one thing that I have found very prominent within the digital twin ecosystem is that we must look at how digital twins can be implemented from the ground up, but also how they can be implemented when it comes to the retrofitting of the buildings that we live in, within the infrastructure systems that we have. And I think Phil, probably with the decarbonization project, does a little bit of that, because obviously our transport network is very much built out now. But I think it's also important when we're looking at our infrastructure that we have, especially here in the UK, that we must look at how can we best implement these new technologies with these very historic and very professional, I'm trying to think of the proper word. I might just stick with historic. Very historic but beautiful buildings, find ways to bring them into the digital age without changing what they are.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point, because an awful lot of the systems and assets we need already exist. So we've got to understand those. So yeah, I'm very much with you. Kamutha, coming back to you, kind of bouncing back pretty quickly. Obviously, we're going to get a Phil after this, but Phil's already had a bite of this cherry. So Kamutha, what do you reckon when it comes to the kind of the gaps and big things which we need to also pay attention to?
Yeah, so I think I touched on it in my question to Simon earlier, which is, we've been talking about data owners a lot, but I think there is, and in my world, it looms very large, the issue of consented data and whose data we're using, being able to effectively remove data from the digital twin as well, excise it out where necessary, where consent has been taken out. And a lot of those considerations really go into how we, implement and design, the systems for our digital twins. And obviously Simon's in much earlier stages, and he explained that as well, that they're figuring out what they could do, without getting into some of that stickier, into those stickier areas. But I think that is something that I didn't hear spoken about very much, but does very much loom large in all the implementations we do.
Fantastic, thank you. Phil, what about your second bite of the gap cherry?
Yeah, okay. So I think an area that isn't coming through in what I've heard and in the discussions I've had over the last 12 months is how do you ensure that digital twinning doesn't leave some people behind? I mean, digital at the moment is leaving people behind. You know, I have neighbours who are in their 70s and 80s and don't have a mobile phone. And those that have just got them can't use it. We saw the big problem with going to automated ticket dispensers for the railway. You know, this potentially is a big barrier to implementing technology full stop, but digital twins in particular, which effectively arrest control from people. Yeah, that's a big issue. And I guess I would like to see more of a voice given to citizen groups that represent those bodies. You know, it would be really interesting in your next conference, for instance, to get a citizen group to come and say, yeah, this is all very nice, but yeah, I struggle with getting onto a bus because I've got a wheelchair. What are you going to do about that? So there's that, and then I think the bit that needs reinforcing, because it's there, I think, is really about the standards, connectivity, and interoperability. It's still a bit opaque for people to really know how it's going to work. Those people who do know, but those of us who aren't so sure find it difficult to understand how this is all going to stick together and what control and what say they will have in that.
Yeah. Yeah, so if I can chuck in my perspective, which kind of builds, I think, on what you've all said as well, which is that I think it's really good to be hearing from the speakers quite consistently that what we're dealing with here is a socio-technical problem. That's good because that didn't used to be said, but now it is being said. I think that's very good because it's not just technical. Obviously, we've got to address the human and organizational factors. So I thought that's a very good, consistent message coming out. I also have to say I like the fact that we're talking about information and not just technology. You know, the whole idea that the point of this is to make better decisions faster, and that's an information thing. So I think again it's a very positive thing that we're talking not just about tech, but talking about the information that tech serves. So I think that's a really good thing as well. And I think it's also very good that we are talking about interoperability and we're talking about digital twins talking to each other and we are talking federation. And a number of you have already mentioned that. I just want to kind of emphasize it because it's very natural, I think, for the market to talk about individual digital twins because in some ways that's the easy bit. But getting them to talk to each other and imagining more benefits from having federation, again, it's really good, I think, that this is firmly on the agenda now. And that came across very clearly from today. The bit that I think we can still do a bit of building on, and Phil, you've touched on this, is the systems view. Because it is very easy for people to focus on the new stuff and on the projects. And in fact, John, you were kind of saying the same thing. You know, what about the stuff we've already got? But I would make this big distinction between the kind of the projects, which are interventions on the system, and the system, which is where we actually get the benefit from. And so I think that this whole relationship between the part and the whole is really, really important. And the way that I would articulate that is that if you look at individual digital twins, they're all about making better decisions faster. And there's benefit in that, obviously. But if you get digital twins to talk to each other, then what you can do is understand the system better and then intervene more effectively. And then that speaks to a much bigger thing, which I think, Phil, you were touching on, which is it's all about the outcomes. That's what we're trying to do. But when there's big kind of system level outcomes that we're trying to achieve, better outcomes for people and nature, that type of thing, then it means we have to understand systems, we have to intervene more effectively, and federated digital twins can help in that. And I think this is emphasizing what Phil said, that gives us the big why It's so that we can deliver better outcomes. So yeah, I think there was an awful lot to like from this morning. But I think that if we did the systems stuff more intentionally, and in particular, we realise that the whole is more than the sum of the parts, then we're onto a winner. So we're coming very close to the end now. You might have seen that there's some great comments and great reflections in the chat. But what I thought we'd do just to finish with is come back to each of you for your parting shot. What is your word of wisdom to close off the UK's contribution to this conference? What is the one thing that you want people to go away holding dear as we come towards an end? So I'm just going to pick you in random order. Kamutha first. What do you reckon? What's your one word of wisdom for everyone?
So if we have 1 or 2 minutes, it won't be.
Oh, it's less than that, I'm afraid. It's
Okay.
less than 1 minute each. Yeah.
Could you come to me last then, and I'll give you. I'll
Okay. No problem. No problem. So John, you were joking online about your accent, and there were some words which you were going to avoid. So avoiding those words, what is your word of wisdom?
I would say to progress together, find ways to collaborate and work together on overcoming these large-scale challenges.
I love that. I love that. That sounds like something I remember hearing kind of through this journey of the whole thing of learning by doing and progressing by sharing. It sounds like an echo of that. That's really good. So Phil, what do you reckon?
I think the speed and magnitude of change that we're facing across many dimensions in the world dictates a digital approach, which ultimately is a digital twinning approach. I don't think we can address the challenges that are facing us without it.
Very good. You got a thumbs up from Arthur for that. And Kamutha, back to you.
Back to me. So I think one of the incredibly valuable outcomes that we could achieve in terms of influencing human behavior is going to require that we add a layer onto these digital twins around human behavior, which is my specialist area of interest as well. And I think that bringing these layers together is going to be so incredibly powerful going forward. So which is really to the point of going forward together, really, I think.
Wonderful. You've been a fantastic panel. Really good and useful reflections and great words of wisdom as we finish. So thank you very much indeed. So what this basically means is that we've come to the end of the UK stream. I think you've wrapped it up very nicely for us. And basically we now hand the comm over to Arthur for the North American agenda, which is all about the application stream. And so that kicks off again at 1:45 UK time. But since it's based in North America, that is 8:45 in whichever time they use over there. So thank you very much, everyone. A really enjoyable session. Thank you very much. And you have to click on the new link for North America. Do that, and see you later. Thank you.